Introduction to Wandering the World with a Farm. He allows him to be reckless, and I cultivate my own field. If you want to provoke me, I won't be able to pass next year. Zhao Hai, the otaku, took QQ farm and traveled to a different world, becoming possessed by a forced noblewoman. His fiefdom was a black land where nothing could grow, and most importantly, he had an incredibly powerful fiancé AE. Surprisingly, his fiancé AE was the heir of a duchy, the future Grand Duchess. The most important thing is that he is still a demonic martial arts useless material, unable to learn magic or martial arts skills, and completely useless. I can't learn magic, but I have a farm. Dare you attack me? I will release insects to eat up your military rations, eat up your crops, and apply insecticides and herbicides to your water sources. I will plant weeds on your ground. I see you dare to attack me. What? Are you hiring a killer to assassinate me? He, I'm hiding in my own farm cabin, watching how you hit me. When you leave, I'll make your country's food production go out, and everyone will rebel against you. You dare to come and kill me. Looking at a somewhat dark otaku, how can he use his QQ farm to become a nightmare for everyone in that world of swords and magic? Chapter 1. Wearing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Young master, it's time to get up and have breakfast. An old but serious voice rang in Zhao Hai's ear, and he didn't pay much attention. He just felt a headache. He thought his computer wasn't turned off and the TV drama was memorizing the lyrics. But the voice continued, young master, it's time to get up. As a nobleman, getting up on time is a good habit. Zhao Hai was stunned for a moment, because the sound didn't seem to come from the computer. It seemed to be right in his ear and very real, definitely not from his broken speaker. Although his head was hurting, Zhao Hai still struggled to open his eyes, but what caught his eye was not the white roof of his house, but a gauze tent. Zhao Hai hesitated for a moment, turned his head, and found himself lying on a large wooden bed. Standing beside the bed was a man in his 50s, with meticulously combed gray hair and a serious expression, calmly looking at him. Zhao Hai stared blankly at the serious-looking old man, then turned his gaze to the surroundings. This was a house made of stone, very simple. Apart from the big bed he was lying on, there was only a desk and a chair that could be considered furniture. The floor and walls seemed to have just been cleaned, and the windows were made of wooden window frames with a layer of white paper pasted on them. There was a sparkling stone above his head for lighting, and there was nothing else in the whole house. At this moment, the old man said once, young master, you're fine now. Please get up as soon as possible. As a nobleman, you should have a regular lifestyle. It's breakfast time now. Please wake up as soon as possible, young master. Zhao Hai's eyes turned to look like the old man, and a sudden thought flashed through his mind. Wear it. Then I felt a sharp pain in my brain and suddenly passed out. Green Buddha was stunned when he saw that Zhao Hai had passed out. He hurried out of the house. There were 4 people standing outside, 2 men and 2 women. Both men were young. They looked like teenagers, but they were all 2 meters tall. Their skin and flesh were like iron, their skin was black, and their hair was short. They were identical. They were twins, but their expressions were a bit silly. 2 women, one older, in her 40s, had a very chubby figure with blue hair and kind eyebrows. She now had an anxious expression on her face. A younger girl, who is only 16 or 7 years old today, has long blue hair, a small oval-shaped face, a petite figure, fair skin, and is a rare beauty. She is now looking down with a wooden expression on her face. As soon as Green came out, the older woman immediately said, Green, how are you? Has the young master woken up? Green nodded and shook his head again, saying, I'm awake, but I just woke up and fainted again. Merlin, isn't your magic ineffective? Is there something wrong with those medicines? Someone's been playing tricks in them. Mei Lin said with a cold face, if that's really the case, I'll fight against those guys. Although the young master is a bit of a jerk, he's the last blood of the Buddha family. Those bastards of the empire, don't you forget how much the old master did for the empire back then. These ungrateful bastards. Green said solemnly, you'd better go inside and take a look. If it's not possible, I'll treat the young master with water magic. Anyway, we must keep the last blood of the Buddha family. Merlin nodded, but then looked fiercely at Green and said, if the young master is well, you are not allowed to demand the young master according to the requirements of any nobles. They have already arrived in such a ghostly place. What noble etiquette is there? Let them all go to hell. Look at the mouths and faces of those nobles, thinking about it makes me sick. Green looked at Merlin helplessly, but said seriously, no, the young master is still a viscount. He must be like a nobleman. I want to teach the young master to become a true nobleman so that he can live up to the great kindness of the Buddha family to us. Merlin glared fiercely at Green and said, if you dare to do that to the young master again, I won't cook for you and starve you to death. We're in this kind of place now, and we don't know how long we can last. Do you think the young master will have a chance to return to the empire when we're in the capital? Don't dream anymore. Green gave a bitter smile and stopped talking. He also knew that Merlin was telling the truth. The reason they were assigned to this barren land this time was because the king of the empire, along with those noble leaders, did it. If it weren't for the glorious achievements of the Buddha family in the past, they might have directly destroyed the Buddha family. Although the Buddha family still exists now, it is impossible to enter the aristocratic circle of the empire in the future, and people may even deliberately forget that such a family still exists. What disheartened Green the most was that the king of the empire was afraid that the Buddha family would dig up again and give their young master, the last heir of the Buddha family, the last hope of the Buddha family. Adam Buddha drank the water of nothingness. This water of nothingness is an unparalleled treasure, and the value of each drop cannot be measured by gold coins. This potion of nothingness has only one function, making your power turn into nothingness. The water of nothingness, with just one drop, can instantly transform a magician with the power of the Dharma god, a warrior with the power of the martial god, or a divine-level knight into an ordinary person. From then on, there is no way to use any magic or fighting spirit, and there is no medicine to cure it. Although this potion can make people unable to use fighting spirit and magic, it will not have any other impact on their body. It only turns you into an ordinary person. If this person is already an ordinary person, then this kind of potion is no different from ordinary water. However, if this person is a nobleman or a strong individual, they will instantly turn you into a demonic and useless person, a waste, causing you to fall from a high cloud into an bottomless abyss. And Adam Buddha was ordered by the king to drink this potion, and he could never learn any magic or fighting spirit in his lifetime. He could only be an ordinary person. If this happened in another noble family, it wouldn't be a big deal. In the future, become an ordinary person, just eat and die, and don't think about any power matters. But if this happened to Adam, it would be fatal. He was the last heir of the Buddha family, and he needed strength to revive the family's glory, allowing the Buddha family to once again enter the historical stage of the Aksu Empire. However, he drank the water of nothingness, and from then on, he could no longer learn any magic or fighting spirit, so he could no longer have the power to revive the family. The last hope of the Buddha family was extinct. If it's just a lack of power, Green is not afraid either. After all, he is also an 8th-level warrior, his wife Merlin is also an 8th-level water magician, and his granddaughter Meg is also a 6th-level wind magician. With them, the Buddha family's strength is sufficient. If they were in their original fiefdom, then it wouldn't be difficult for the Buddha family to prosper once. After all, the Buddha family's fiefdom was in the southern part of the empire, with a main city and 4 medium-sized cities, a large population, and fertile land. As long as they developed quietly for a few years, the Buddha family would still thrive. But unexpectedly, the king changed their family's fiefdom from the south of the empire to the Black Wasteland to the north of the empire. The Black Soil Wilderness is a famous dead land on the continent. Although it covers a large area, equivalent to 1/3 of the total area of the Otaku Empire, there are no plants growing here. No plants grow here, even those plants that grow in the desert will wither and die. Legend has it that the Black Soil Wasteland used to be a fertile land, but later a battlefield broke out here. Several magic masters at the level of the Dharma god jointly used a super-large forbidden spell, turning this land into a dead land and no longer growing anything. If it's just a dead end, Green is not afraid either. As long as transportation is more convenient, they can do some business and at least support themselves. However, the Black Soil Wasteland is surrounded by an abandoned dwarf iron mountain. After crossing the mountain, it becomes one of the 5 forbidden areas on the mainland, the Corpse Swamp. This Corpse Swamp also belongs to the territory of the Buddha family. In fact, the territory of the Buddha family is the largest in the entire Otaku Empire. And the only exit here is adjacent to the territory of the Vassar family. Although the Vassar family has a marriage contract with the Buddha family, how can the Buddha family talk about marriage with the most powerful Vassar family in the empire now that they have reached this point? This place has truly become a dead end. Fortunately, this place used to be under the control of the empire, so there was also a small castle on the abandoned dwarf iron mountain. In addition, this mountain was not affected by the prohibition curse, so there was still some land on the mountain that could be cultivated. These people still couldn't die from hunger. After learning that their fiefdom had been changed to this place, Green immediately exchanged all the money of the Buddha family for slaves, living supplies, seeds, and some tools. Then he led Adam, who had been unconscious since drinking the water of nothingness, to stay here in the abandoned but still usable small castle. Along with Green, there was his wife Merlin, his granddaughter Meg, and a pair of twin orphans, Wood and Stone, adopted by Adam's father back then. With 100 slaves, there was no one left. During the journey from the Empire to the Black Soil Wasteland, Adam was always unconscious. Fortunately, Merlin was a magician who could occasionally use magic to heal Adam, which allowed him to arrive safely. Yesterday, she checked Adam's condition and believed he could wake up today, so Green woke him up by the bed. However, they did not expect that the Adam lying in bed now was no longer Adam, it was just Zhao Hai, an earth otaku dressed in Adam's skin. Chapter 2. Unfortunate Identity. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the moment when Zhao Hai fainted, a memory that did not belong to him suddenly appeared in his mind, as if a program that did not belong to your computer had suddenly been installed, almost causing Zhao Hai's brain to crash. Although it did not crash now, it also caused his brain to crash, digesting the information in his brain bit by bit. I don't know how long it took, but Zhao Hai woke up and suddenly felt a memory in his brain that didn't belong to him at all. In this memory, his name was Adam Buddha, born into a family of generals in the Otaku Empire on the Arc continent. He had served the Otaku Empire for 3 generations and held a high position as a marquis. However, in Adam's generation, he declined. Adam was just a playboy, and his mother died early. With his father's constant military presence, he was extremely lawless and bullied men and women. However, his father was a very protective person and held a heavy army, so no one touched him. But his father did something wrong, standing in the wrong line when the new and old kings of the Otaku Empire were replaced. The old king of the Otaku Empire was the 47th, with a total of 15 princes. Among them, 5 could inherit the throne, namely the Grand Prince, 3rd Prince, 4th Prince, 7th Prince, and 13th Prince. According to the laws of the Otaku Empire, only children born to the queen and noble concubines of the king have the right to inherit the throne. Of course, not all children born to the queen and noble concubines can inherit the throne, only those who are granted titles of Grand Duke or above can do so. As soon as a royal person is born, they will have a title of Count. If they have not made any contributions to the empire, they will only be a Count throughout their lives, or an Count without a fiefdom. Only when they have made contributions, their title will rise, up to a Prince. Of course, it is impossible for children of queens and nobles to have only one earl's title. They are usually granted the title of duke, and with a small contribution or any other excuse, they can be promoted to Grand Duke and eventually to Prince, so that they can inherit the throne. The 5 children who could inherit the throne from the 47th king of Aksu were all princes. Among them, the eldest prince, the 4th prince, was born to the empress, the 3rd prince, and the 7th prince were born to the noble consort Karen, while the 13th prince was born to the noble consort Heir and was also the weakest in strength, which was not favored by people. People have always believed that the eldest prince was born to the empress, and he is the orthodox. The 3rd prince has always worn the same pants as the eldest prince, so many nobles in the empire support the eldest prince's succession. The 4th prince and the 7th prince are in the same group, and the 7th prince has the support of the 4th prince and the Karen family. In the court, his voice is also very high. Only the 13th prince, the youngest, weakest in strength, and the most low-key in character, so no one has been optimistic about him. And Adam's father was a member of the prince party, which was normal because the prince was the most popular at the time, and the Buddha family was not an old aristocrat. They only rose to the position of marquis step by step through military achievements in the generation of Buddha's great-grandfather. They wanted to quickly enter the ranks of those old aristocrats, so he chose to support the prince who was most likely to become the king at that time. This way, as long as the prince became the king, the Buddha family could enter the core of the Aksu Empire's power and become the truly recognized aristocrats in the empire. It should be noted that on the mainland, the nobility of any king is divided into 2 types, one is the old aristocrats, and the other is the new aristocrats. The gap between the new and old aristocrats is very obvious, and the new aristocrats are generally considered nouveau riche and will not be recognized by the old aristocrats, so they cannot enter the power core of the country. After so many years of development on the mainland, the aristocrats have played a huge role in a country. Sometimes, they can even influence the rise and fall of a country, especially those old aristocrats who have developed for thousands or decades. They are a force in the empire that even imperial power fears. It can be said that those old aristocrats are the power core of the entire empire, and any new aristocrat wants their recognition. If you want to gain the recognition of those old aristocrats, you naturally need to have corresponding strength. The Buddha family has been digging up too quickly. This is the way that several old kings of the Aksu family came up with to balance those old aristocrats. However, since the death of the 46th king, the Buddha family's future has been difficult. The new king wants to promote them, but those old aristocrats want to suppress them, so they can only continue to support the new king in order to let the family develop. But Adam's father stood in the wrong line. He supported the most popular prince, but in the end, he did not become the king. Instead, he was the most low-key. The seemingly weakest 13th prince became the king, and the prince was executed. The members of the prince's party had no good fate. Adam's father was also found an excuse to be imprisoned, and he died inexplicably in prison. The bad things Adam had done before were also exposed, but due to the presence of Grimm and others, the empire was afraid that several 8th-level powerhouses would cause them trouble. In addition to the new emperor's succession, they also had to show a little belly, so Adam was dealt with lightly, demoting his rightful title of Marquis to Viscount, replacing their previously fertile fiefdom with a black wasteland, and Adam was fed the waters of nothingness, becoming a complete useless person. Even if the general aristocracy has a fiefdom, they will entrust it to the steward or someone they trust to manage. Although the fiefdom is their own foundation, they will stay in the imperial capital to pay attention to any changes that may occur in the empire, which are beneficial to the family and which are unfavorable to the family. But Adam and the others were not. After being granted a fiefdom by the king, they were ordered to leave the imperial capital within 3 days and were not allowed to leave the fiefdom for the next 3 years, which is unprecedented among all families. The current king of the Aksu Empire, the former 13th Prince Aboyo Aksu, chose to treat the Buddha family in this way, firstly because the Buddha family belonged to the party of the Grand Prince, and secondly because of the pressure from the old nobles. Now that he has just ascended to the throne, he will certainly exert all his efforts to suppress the Grand Prince and the Seven Princes party. However, he dare not move those nobles, and those veteran nobles, who are not pleased with the Buddha family, naturally put pressure on Aboyo on the side, which is why Aboyo made such a decision. The reason why Adam was given the water of nothingness was because the Buddha family's ancestral cultivation method of fighting spirit, the dragon fighting spirit, was very famous on the continent. This fighting spirit cultivation method was unintentionally obtained by Adam's great-grandfather. His cultivation speed was 3 times faster than ordinary fighting spirit methods, and his attack power was also very strong. It has always been the top fighting spirit cultivation method coveted by the major families of the empire. If Adam were to continue learning fighting spirit, if he really learned the dragon fighting spirit and still remembers today's grudges, it would be a threat to those nobles and royalty. Therefore, Aboyo gave Adam the opportunity to learn fighting spirit. He drank the water of nothingness. And the reason why Aboyo did not kill Adam, in addition to the reasons mentioned earlier, is also because Green dedicated this method of cultivating fighting spirit to Aboyo and even made a poisonous oath. In the future, the Buddha family will no longer practice dragon fighting spirit, so Aboyo released Adam. Of course, Green did not dedicate this set of martial arts to Aboyo openly. He entered the palace at night, found Aboyo, and then presented the martial arts. First, he pleaded for Adam. Second, he let Aboyo know his strength and let Aboyo fight disinfection and sterilization Adam. Aboyo was indeed afraid that experts like Green would cause him trouble, so he agreed to Green's request and only demoted Adam's title and changed his fiefdom, without taking Adam's life. Green also agreed. He was very clear that although his own strength was not weak, the strength of the royal family was also strong. The reason why he could enter the palace unnoticed was because he was very familiar with the situation inside the palace, and secondly, because the new emperor had just ascended the throne and the palace had undergone a major reshuffle, and his strength was still a bit weak. In addition, his martial arts were very special, so he was not discovered. The reason why Green did not go to save Adam's father before was because he thought that Apollos would not kill Adam's father. Anyway, Adam's father was also a bargaining chip used by the royal family to deal with those old aristocrats, and the royal family should not easily abandon it. But they didn't expect that the reason why Aboyo could become king was due to the support of those old aristocrats. Therefore, after he ascended the throne, he naturally wanted to please those old aristocrats and killed Adam's father. When Green learned the news, Adam's father had already died, and Green had to find a way to protect Adam, the last bloodline of the Buddha family. And the reason why he handed over the cultivation method of dragon fighting chi is also due to the water of nothingness. The reason why the water of nothingness becomes the supreme treasure on the continent is not only because it can prevent people from practicing magic and fighting spirit, but also because this situation will continue to affect their descendants. That is to say, as long as you drink the water of nothingness, your descendants will also be unable to learn magic and fighting spirit, and this situation will not end until 10 generations later. But that's for a whole 10 generations, who can't learn magic and fighting spirit. What will happen then? Whether this family will still exist or not, and whether it can continue to the 10th generation, are all unknown. This is the terrifying aspect of the water of nothingness, and it is also the reason why Green surrendered his dragon fighting spirit. Adam and the 10 generations of the Buddha family after Adam were unable to learn the dragon fighting spirit. So what's the use of keeping this thing? It's better to give it up for Adam's life. That's why Green didn't hesitate to give up the dragon fighting spirit. And the fact has proven that what he did was completely correct. If he didn't surrender his dragon fighting spirit, even Adam wouldn't have been able to leave the imperial capital alive. But it is also unknown whether someone tampered with the water of nothingness, or whether Adam himself was in conflict with the water of nothingness. After drinking the water of nothingness, Adam fainted and did not wake up until the fiefdom. When he woke up, he had already transformed from that playboy Adam to the Earth's otaku Zhao Hai. Chapter 3 Awakens. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhao Hai slowly opened his eyes, and now he knew what had happened. Adam's memory was completely integrated with his memory, and it truly made Zhao Hai understand that he had truly traveled through time, but was still the most common soul-piercing and losing in travel. As an otaku, if he doesn't know what time travel is, he can't be considered a complete otaku. However, Zhao Hai really didn't expect that he would catch up with time travel and even travel to such an unlucky person. From Adam's memory, Zhao Hai already knew what was going on. However, when Adam fainted, he had not yet left the imperial capital. He did not know where he was now. However, Zhao Hai knew that he was no longer the home of the capital of the Oxu Empire, because when he woke up last time, he looked around and knew that it was not Adam's familiar home. As soon as Zhao Hai opened his eyes, he felt someone around him. He turned his head and found the old man he had seen when he first woke up standing next to him. Although the old man had a serious face, his eyes were full of concern. Unlike the first time he woke up, this time Zhao Hai had already met this old man. He was the old butler of the Buddha family, Grim Buddha. Grim was originally not sexual to Buddha, but later was given a surname by Zhao Hai's great-grandfather. He had been loyal to the Buddha family and was the most trusted person in the Buddha family. However, Adam didn't get along well with Green in the past. Adam used to be a playboy, but Green was a serious person who always kept an eye on him and told him that one thing was not right and the other was not right. Therefore, Adam disliked Green very much. However, because Green's qualifications were too old, let alone him, even his father dared not be rude to Green, so he could only endure it. After being reborn, Zhao Hai will certainly not be as mentally disabled as Adam in the past. He has read countless travel novels, has adult thoughts, and has always had a very bumpy life. Of course, Zhao Hai is much more sensible than Adam, who was pampered since childhood. Of course, he also knows the importance of Green to him. With such an old butler, he can completely trust everything to him. And from Adam's memory, he could tell that this old butler had even greater strength than his father, and in this world, strength represents hope for survival. Long-term otaku life, long-term fantasies, combined with Adam's memories, made Zhao Hai less resistant to time travel. Similarly, he didn't have much expectation, it was just a change in living environment. The only two things that made him unhappy were that there was no computer here, and he couldn't access the internet anymore. Letting an otaku not access the internet was even more painful than killing him. The second is that he was actually drunk with the water of nothingness, and from then on, he could no longer learn fighting spirit and magic, which shattered Zhao Hai's dream of dominating the world. Zhao Hai did not realize that he had already been assimilated by Adam's memory. The reason why he was not panicked was because he was familiar with everything here in the Ark continent. From his two displeasure points, it can be seen that the first point is about Zhao Hai on Earth, and the second point is related to the Ark continent here. However, Zhao Hai also understood very well. Although he was unhappy, everyone had come and there was nothing to say. Since they had come, let's settle down and become Adam Buddha in the future. Thinking of this, Zhao Hai couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, as if his heart had relaxed. No wonder he could easily accept Adam's identity, because in his previous life, there were no family members at home, and due to being too homey, he didn't have many friends. It can be said that when he was on Earth, he was carefree. Now that he is here, he has only changed his environment, and there is nothing remarkable about him. There are also a few people who care about him around, and there is nothing bad about him. At this moment, Green also noticed that Zhao Hai had already woken up. He quickly walked to the bed and said to Zhao Hai, "Young master, how are you feeling? Is there any discomfort there? Is your head still painful?" Zhao Hai had not heard these words of concern for a long time. As soon as he heard them, he couldn't help but feel a warmth in his heart. He felt as if his body was not in any big trouble, so he quickly sat up and shook his head at Green, saying, "I'm fine, Grandpa Green. Where are we?" Green was noticeably stunned for a moment. Adam used to not be so polite, but now that he suddenly speaks like this, he is not used to it. However, he immediately said, "Young master, we have arrived at the fiefdom." Zhao Hai was stunned for a moment and immediately understood. He nodded and said, "Is it the black soil wasteland?" Green was surprised by Zhao Hai's calmness, but he nodded and said, "Yes, this is the black soil wasteland." Zhao Hai nodded and said, "Where are we now? How is the situation here? How many people are there in total? How much land is there?" In Adam's memory, there is only a small memory of the black soil wasteland as it is said to be. It is adjacent to a decaying corpse swamp, and the land here cannot be cultivated, etc. There is nothing else he knows about. That's why Zhao Hai asked this question. Anyway, he is now Adam and will be living in this black soil wasteland in the future. He also needs to know the situation here. Green looked at Adam in a daze. If it weren't for Adam always under his nose, he would have thought that Adam had lost his bag and that the person in front of him was definitely not Adam he knew. Is it really setbacks that make people grow? Although Green was puzzled, he would not doubt Adam's identity, and could only consider Adam's current performance as his maturity. However, Zhao Hai's performance made Green very happy, and he quickly said, "Young master, we are in the Lord's mansion of the fiefdom." The Lord's mansion is located on an iron mountain in the black soil wasteland. This iron mountain is abandoned by the dwarves, and there is some land on it for cultivation. Please punish the young master. The old slave made the decision without authorization, sold all the things in the house, bought a large amount of supplies and 100 slaves. Now we only have more than 100 gold coins in cash in hand. The only people who come here are the old slave, his wife, granddaughter, wood, and stones. The only 100 slaves left is the old slave. The others have already. I left. Zhao Hai nodded and analyzed the current situation in his head. They had reached a dead end, but there was a city lord's mansion to live in, a mountain to grow something, 100 slaves, and 5 people who could be completely at ease. They were also the closest people. Zhao Hai nodded and said, "Grandpa Green did a great job. In such a place, gold coins are useless. Only materials can support us for a while longer. Alright, I don't have much to do here. Grandpa Green, you should go and arrange how much land can be cultivated in this iron mountain, and what things are suitable for us to grow. After all, we still need to eat." Green nodded and said, "Okay, young master, please rest first. I'll have Meg come to serve you later." As soon as Green mentioned Meg, Zhao Hai immediately remembered the girl with a delicate appearance, green hair, and a petite figure. He was Green's granddaughter. However, Zhao Hai then burst into a bitter smile, because Adam had wanted to sexually assault Merlin before, but Merlin was a level 6 magician with a weak exterior and a strong inner strength. Although she dared not do anything to him, whenever Adam thought about doing something to her, she would kill herself, making Adam afraid to really do anything to her. As soon as he thought of this, Zhao Hai couldn't help but curse inwardly. He had to take responsibility for what Adam had caused before. In this situation, seeing Merlin's embarrassment, he immediately said, "No need, Grandpa Green. I want to rest for a while and don't let them disturb me. Just call me during dinner time." Green bowed and said, "Yes, I'm leaving." After saying that, he walked out of Zhao Hai's room. Zhao Hai sighed in his heart and slowly walked down from the bed. Although he remembered lying in bed for a long time, he didn't feel any discomfort at all. Instead, he felt like he had endless strength. He couldn't help but stretch lazily and walked to the window, gently pushing it open to look out. What catches the eye is a small castle-style building, and he lives on the top floor, where he can clearly see everything outside. This is a Western-style small castle, with a small square and a circle of walls in front. Outside the castle, there is an unmarked black land, which is as black as oil-soaked. Reading www.uukangshu.net gives people a feeling of lifelessness. On the square of the castle, there was a pile of things piled up. Zhao Hai carefully looked at it, as if it were all some daily necessities, with a large group of people busy there. These people are male and female, wearing uniform coarse cloth clothes. The difference is that there is a mark on the man's forehead, which is too far away to see clearly. However, Zhao Hai knows that it must be the mark of the Buddha family, representing that these people are slaves of the Buddha family. Looking on both sides again, it was a barren mountain with some crooked trees growing on it. These trees didn't grow well, and each one seemed to be seriously ill and lethargic. Besides these trees being barren grass, these grasses are not tall and look malnourished. Retrieving his gaze, he took another look at the castle that now belonged to him. The castle was not small, even if it could accommodate thousands of people, it wouldn't be a problem. It seemed like it had been deserted for a long time, with some moss growing on the walls and some grass growing in the crevices of the stones. It looked dilapidated, and as he looked at the window paper on the floor, it was clearly newly pasted, while the other rooms hadn't been pasted yet. Zhao Hai couldn't help but give a bitter smile. Adam's memory clearly remembered that the Buddha family used glass in the imperial mansion, but here they used primitive window paper, which was quite different. However, Zhao Hai exuded a sense of pride. Regardless of what others said, all the land he could see was his. He didn't believe that the seemingly fat and oily black soil couldn't grow crops. He must live his own life and let those who had harmed him see it. This could be considered as some compensation for taking up Adam's body. At this moment, a voice suddenly rang out in his mind. Chapter 4. Space Farm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Space Farm program has started and is connecting to the network. The network connection is successful and the program is normal. The host has been discovered and checked. Everything is normal, and it is bound to the host. Your current level is level 1, and the system rewards 500 gold coins. 6 bags of grass seeds can be planted on 1 acre of land. You have already cultivated 1 piece of land, covering an area of 10 acres, with a level of 0. You can purchase the seeds you need in the store and buy the harvested fruits in the store to exchange for gold coins. Due to network problems, you can freely enter the farm. You can only contact the main machine and cannot contact any friends. We apologize for any inconvenience caused. Zhao Hai stood there foolishly, feeling as if he was dreaming, everything seemed so unreal. But he did hear this voice just now. If it were on Earth, Zhao Hai would not believe these things. At most, he thought someone was playing a prank, but it was different here. Even crossing the river made him catch up. What else did he believe? Zhao Hai immediately said in his mind, "Enter the farm." As soon as he finished speaking, he felt a flower in front of him. At first sight, he was not in his own castle, but in a piece of open land, which was very large, about 10 acres, all of which had been reclaimed. There was a new shovel beside the field. Next to the land, there was a small spring. There was a bucket beside the spring. There was a small grass house. On the left side of the grass house was a grass dog's nest. Under the window of the grass house, there were 2 bottles, one with the words, "Kill insects," the other with the words, "Weed weeds." Next to the 2 bottles, there was a small straw house with a straw dog's nest. There is a basket with a word, "Close," written on it. On the right side of the straw hut, there is a smaller straw hut with a word, "Warehouse," hanging on it. In addition to these words, there is a thick fog all around, and nothing can be seen clearly. He can only see this straw hut and that open space. Zhao Hai is too familiar with this situation. Apart from having no background, this is his most familiar game, farm game. Unlike other game otaku, Zhao Hai prefers to read books, novels, and write novels. Although he only receives some meager royalties, he enjoys it and never plays games again. Later, a friend introduced Zhao Hai to play a farm game. This game didn't require you to spend too much time and was easy to operate, so Zhao Hai persisted in playing it. Now his farm level is already at level 27, although not too high, he has cultivated all his land and even opened a ranch to play. And those who first opened the farm game knew that the system would give you a free scene, as well as a grass house. The scene at that time was the same as what Zhao Hai sees now, but the difference is that Zhao Hai saw it through a computer at that time, but now he sees it in this space. Zhao Hai stared blankly at everything. He didn't know what to expect, so he couldn't help but squat down and grabbed a handful of dirt on the ground. But just as he was grabbing the soil, a voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Space land, level 1, has already been cultivated, can be used to plant crops, increase crop maturity time, 10 times, can be taken out of space for use, can improve the land outside the space. Zhao Hai was taken aback for a moment, then delighted. He knew too little about this space, and now it happened. He immediately ran to the side of the spring and touched it with his hand. Sure enough, the prompt sounded the next time. Space spring water, grade 1, can be consumed, has the effect of improving the human body, can be used for irrigation, increase crop ripening time, 10 times, can be taken out of the space for use, and can improve the land outside the space. Zhao Hai had already been knocked unconscious by this sudden good thing. He reached out with one hand in the spring, his eyes fixed, and he chuckled foolishly, forgetting to even take out his hand. After a while, Zhao Hai stood up and laughed heartily, saying, "Thief, I never expected you to be so generous with me." "Ha ha ha, okay, that's great." Zhao Hai was very clear that he had come to the Ark continent and became a person who could not practice any magic or fighting spirit. Therefore, his life was destined to be ordinary, and Adam's revenge could not be avenged. However, with this space, it was different. Even if he could not seek revenge, he could allow the Buddha family to survive and prosper. This can also be considered as a way of repaying Adam. After a while, Zhao Hai calmed down. First, he ran to the shovel beside the field. He wanted to see if the shovel was as magical as in the game. When he touched the shovel, the prompt sound sounded, "Shovel, tool, level I, can automatically turn the land, working hours, 10 mu/day, can take out space for use." Zhao Hai smiled again and then walked to the edge of the bucket. He touched the bucket and heard a prompt sound. "Bucket, tool, level 1, can automatically irrigate the land. Working hours are 10 acres per day, and space can be taken out for use. Insecticides, pesticides, toxic, level 1, can automatically kill pests, prohibited from consumption, can take out space, dosage/unlimited. Herbicides, pesticides, toxic, level 1, can automatically kill weeds, prohibited from consumption, can take out space, dosage/unlimited. Basket, tool, level 1, can automatically collect fruits and food, working hours, 10 acres/day, can take out space for use, harvest income, automatically put into the warehouse. After understanding everything outside the house, Zhao Hai understood that this was similar to the space in the game, but it was also different, but it was more suitable for him. Zhao Hai walked into the thatched cottage with excitement. Although it was not big, the contents inside were very comprehensive. There was a wooden bed with hay on it, a table, 4 chairs, a cabinet, a set of stoves, and a whole set of tableware. Most importantly, there was a computer-like object at the bedside, but only a display screen. Zhao Hai walked quickly to the display screen and found that it was on, with only 2 icons on it. One icon read Store and the other icon read Farm Introduction. Zhao Hai quickly clicked on the farm introduction. He really wanted to know why he had such a farm and what exactly happened to it. As soon as Zhao Hai's hand touched the icon of the farm introduction, the icon immediately turned into a white light and shot into his head. Suddenly, Zhao Hai had a lot of information in his mind. It took him a while to digest all this information and roughly guess how the farm came about. Before arriving in this world, Zhao Hai was playing computer games and playing his own farm game. However, for some reason, he suddenly came here, and the farm game also followed him. Perhaps during the journey, the farm underwent a transformation, saving all its original functions and becoming even more powerful. The farm had become its own system, which was also bound to Zhao Hai. That is to say, although Zhao Hai cannot connect to the computer host on Earth through this farm, he can freely use all the functions of this farm, including the store. He can use gold coins to buy things in the store, or buy what he has harvested to the merchant store. He can take things from the farm outside or bring things from outside, and everything is based on his will. However, the farm is only at the first level now, and many functions cannot be used. If it reaches the advanced level, it can even open up a ranch and expand its land continuously. There is no limit to what degree it can expand to. To upgrade the farm, you can exchange experience through planting, watering, or killing insects, and gradually upgrade. You can also bring in some space-related things from outside, and the space can be upgraded through continuous evolution. In other words, Zhao Hai can bring in some special products of the Ark continent from outside, increase the number of items or species in the space, and upgrade the space. In simple terms, Zhao Hai has obtained some space-related things. A rebellious cheating device. Zhao Hai only wanted to laugh 3 times now. With this person's incredible space, it would not be difficult for him to develop. Moreover, even if he wanted to avenge the Adam and Buddha families, it was not impossible. A bold plan had taken shape in Zhao Hai's mind. You can improve the land in the black soil wasteland by using space soil and space water, which means you have an incredibly huge farm. As long as this place develops, you can recruit more people and horses. You can become a powerful force and avenge the Buddha family. At that time. After a while, Zhao Hai regained his senses and gently shook his head, chuckling that he had thought too far. He hadn't even skimmed his bazi yet, so let's first understand this clearly before speaking. While thinking about Zhao Hai, he casually clicked on the icon with the store written on it, and the prompt sound immediately sounded. Welcome to the space store. May I ask what you want to buy? Zhao Hai glanced at the screen, which listed pictures of some crops on Earth, with prices and levels written below. Zhao Hai knew that it must be the same as in the game, so he stopped looking and closed the store page. He then looked around. Finally, he walked up to the cabinet, believing that it was not a decoration, but he was disappointed. He touched the cabinet, but there was no sound. Zhao Hai was stunned and opened the cabinet, only to find 3 things inside. A cloth pocket, a short cane carved like a bug on the head, and a short cane carved in the shape of grass on the head. As soon as he saw these, Zhao Hai almost knew what they were doing. He first picked up the cloth pocket, and the prompt sounded as expected. Money bag, can hold gold coins, there is no limit to the quantity. The current number of gold coins is 500, but due to your low level, the gold coins cannot be taken out of space. Zhao Hai was stunned for a moment, followed by a moment of joy. Although the prompt sound was very short, he still understood a lot of things. This money bag was actually like a space bag, but it seemed to only hold gold coins. However, this was not what Zhao Hai paid attention to. What he noticed was the following sentence. Due to his low level, gold coins cannot be taken out of the space. Does that mean that when his level is high, he can take the gold coins in the space to use outside? Oh my God, if that's really the case, that would be great. Chapter 5. Anti-Heavenly Cheating Device. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhao Hai took a few deep breaths, calmed down his mood, picked up the insect-shaped cane again, and the prompt sounded the next time. Pest Spreader, Level 1, can release pests, eat crops, use it 50 times a day, can take out space for use. Weed Applicator, Level 1, can release weeds and compete with crops for nutrients. It is used 50 times a day and can be used out of space. Zhao Hai chuckled and placed these 2 canes. These 2 things are good things, and they are really good for Ren. There was nothing left in the room. Zhao Hai walked out of the grass hut and towards the warehouse. He knew there must be something else in the warehouse, but at least he didn't find any grass seeds that the system had awarded him here. Soon Zhao Hai arrived outside the warehouse, which looked very ordinary. It was a small thatched cottage with a small wooden door on top, and there was nothing special about it. Zhao Hai touched the wooden door with his hand and heard a prompt sound. Warehouse, Level 1, can store items of unlimited types and quantities. The items should be consistent when placed and removed, and can be used outside the space. Existing items include grass seeds and 6 bags. Zhao Hai couldn't help but think of grass seeds. As soon as he finished thinking, 6 small cloth bags appeared in front of him, with the words, grass seeds, written on them. Zhao Hai was taken aback for a moment, and then he was overjoyed. He thought how to use this warehouse, but he just thought about it. This is really great. Zhao Hai pushed the door of the warehouse, but found that it couldn't be opened at all. The warehouse seemed to be just a decoration and had no use at all. Zhao Hai smiled slightly and turned back to the thatched cottage, sitting on the grass bed, quietly sorting out his gains. Now I have such a space. First of all, the land can be planted, the water can be drunk, and it can greatly improve the ripening time of crops, 10 times. With water added, it's another 10 times. Oh my goodness, with this place, you don't have to worry about going hungry in the future. The basket can also be used, and so can the shovel. Buckets, pesticides, pest emitters, and weed emitters are all good things that can be taken out of the space for use. The most important thing is the warehouse. With the existence of the warehouse, he has a huge storage space, which is his most happy. From Adam's memory, it is known that there are many storage tools in this world, and a spatial mage can make one. However, there are not many spatial mages in this world, so although there are many storage tools on the continent now, they are all controlled by those nobles, and ordinary people are still rare. Their storage tools are incomparable to the warehouse. They are all very small, with the largest being only a few hundred cubic meters. They are already called artifacts, and a warehouse as large as his does not even exist. The most important thing is that the storage tools here on the Ark continent cannot store living things, while the space warehouse can store things of any kind. In addition to these fixed items, he also has 6 bags of grass seeds and 500 gold coins. Although gold coins cannot be taken out now, he can buy things in the store in the space, which is enough. After reading the space introduction, Zhao Hai already knows that the basic settings here are similar to the games he used to play. In the future, when he upgrades, he can also open a ranch and do more things. The most important thing is that he still has 10 acres of land and an inexhaustible spring. With these 2 things, he can find ways to improve the black soil in his territory, but the first thing to do is to plant these 10 acres of land. As soon as he thought of this, Zhao Hai couldn't help but burst into a bitter smile. He used to be an otaku, but he was born in the city and had never planted land before. It can be said that he had reached the point where every grain is evenly distributed. Now that he was suddenly asked to farm, he really didn't know how to do it. However, Zhao Hai still sent the grass seeds back to the warehouse. He was very clear that the grass seeds were not of much use to him now, but if he opened a ranch in the future, it would be useful. What he wanted now was edible or money-changing crop seeds. I opened the store interface, which was full of pictures of some crops, with levels and the amount of money spent on purchases written below, just like the game interface. Zhao Hai glanced at the interface and found that it was really similar to the game, with good settings. Now he only has 1 level, and the only seeds he can plant are grass, radish, carrots, and cabbage. He can't plant anything else. Zhao Hai gave it a try and clicked on a 2nd level crop seed. The interface immediately displayed the words, "Your level is not enough." Zhao Hai also understood. It seems that this place is really like a game. Only these 4 crops can be grown, and Zhao Haiho did not hesitate to choose radish seeds. Each bag of radish seeds costs 150 gold coins, and each bag of seeds can grow 10 acres of land. The 10 acres of land can produce nearly 80,000 kilograms of radish. If bought in the system store, you can get 500 gold coins. According to the purchasing power of this world, 500 gold coins are approximately equivalent to 50,000 yuan on Earth, which means that 1 gold coin is equivalent to 100 yuan RMB, 1 silver coin is equivalent to 10 yuan RMB, and 1 copper coin is equivalent to 1 jiao RMB. In this way of calculation, growing carrots is still very cost-effective, but it is still inferior to cabbage and carrots. However, Zhao Hai chose carrots not because of how much money they can buy, but because of experience. When playing farm games before, Zhao Hai once calculated very seriously that among all the crops on the farm, from plowing, to planting, to harvesting, the most experienced one was actually this inconspicuous carrot. Now, his most important thing is to raise the level first, so that he can plant more land. Overall, the gold coins obtained from planting carrots are not much. Based on the current situation, planting carrots is the most suitable choice. Zhao Hai is an otaku who doesn't like to go out, so when he has to go out, he will first calculate what to do today and how to save time. He can also do things that must be done in a few days in advance, so that he cannot go out in a few days. Over time, this has developed a calculating personality. Whenever he does something, he will first carefully calculate and then find the most suitable plan for himself, and follow it. This time, it was the same. He calculated for half a day and finally chose to plant carrots because carrots can gain the most experience, which is nothing compared to the lost gold coins. Zhao Hai immediately bought a bag of radish seeds. The radish seeds did not appear in front of him, but were placed in the warehouse. However, Zhao Hai's mind moved and a small cloth bag immediately appeared in front of him. The bag was not big and looked flat, as if there was nothing inside. However, as soon as Zhao Hai touched the bag, a prompt sound immediately came. Radish seeds, 1 bag, can be planted, can take out space, planting area, 10 acres. Zhao Hai breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, this bag of seeds can grow these 10 acres of land. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the money to buy seeds. However, this system is really capable of calculation. If you give away 6 acres, you can only buy 10 acres. You really know how to calculate. After closing the store interface, Zhao Hai walked out of the grass house with a seed bag, but was stunned as he looked at the 10 acres of land. The seeds were bought, but how should we plant them? He is a otaku who knows how to farm, and even though he's talking about it, he doesn't know how to plant this carrot. It's really killing him. At the thought of this, Zhao Hai couldn't help but want to put the seed bag back in the warehouse. Suddenly, he looked at the seed bag in his hand and was stunned. A bold idea entered his mind. Everything in this space seems to revolve around him on a long journey. Although he needs gold coins to buy seeds, the startup funds are given to him, as if he is playing a real game. If that's the case, can farming also be done without having to do it yourself? Just thinking of it, Zhao Hai immediately wanted to plant radishes. As soon as he had this idea, the seed bag in his hand flew out, and then the shovel in the ground moved. Yu read www.uukangshu.net. Shovel dug a small hole in the ground, and a seed flew out of the seed bag and fell into the small hole, and then the bucket flew up, and poured water into the small hole, and then the shovel would bury the small hole again, and then dig the hole, sprinkle seeds, water, and bury the soil, as if several people with clear division of labor and tacit cooperation were planting the land together. Zhao Hai didn't do anything at all. Zhao Hai couldn't help but burst into laughter as he watched the situation. This space was really great, and he felt like he was the god in it. As soon as his thoughts moved, everything in the space would be done according to his requirements. That was really great. As soon as he saw that it would take some time to finish planting this piece of land, Zhao Hai was also worried that Green would find him missing, so he wanted to leave the space. With a sudden thought, he returned to his room in the Iron Mountain Castle and looked at the sky outside the window. Surprisingly, there was not much change, and no one seemed to have entered the room. This made Zhao Hai believe that he must have been in the space for a short time. Even if he had stayed in it for a little longer, the time flow inside the space would be different from outside. Zhao Hai was so excited that he wanted to scream. With such an incredible cheating device, he could at least become a carefree landlord in this world. Can he help Adam seek revenge? On the other hand, the hard truth is to live a good life first. It must be admitted that Zhao Hai is not a person with great ambitions. He has a strong sense of small-scale farming, as long as he lives well. Revitalizing the Buddha family, helping the Buddha family to seek revenge, and helping Adam to seek revenge are all his momentary excited ideas. When he thinks of the power of those nobles, Zhao Hai feels a chill. The Grand Buddha family is said to be destroyed, and his small Zhao Hai is nothing. It is not a matter of waving his hand to destroy him. Chapter 6. Calculation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Keep a low profile, be sure to keep a low profile. Zhao Hai, who has read countless travel novels, is very clear that if you don't know how to keep a low profile in a foreign world, there won't be any good ending. Zhao Hai believes that novels are just fantasies, and the reason why those protagonists can call the wind and rain in a foreign world is all due to the author's big fingers. If a person is still so arrogant in a completely unfamiliar environment, the consequences will definitely be hard to die. And now Zhao Hai's identity is still the last heir of the Buddha family, and they have also offended the largest force in the Otaku Empire. In this situation, if he doesn't know how to keep a low profile, then he must have died first. Although he now has space on the farm to avoid, there are too many ways to kill someone. Zhao Hai doesn't want to lose his head in his sleep. While Zhao Hai was thinking about these things, suddenly there was a knock on the door. Zhao Hai was taken aback, but immediately said, "Come in." Meg pushed the door open and walked in, looking down at Zhao Hai. She bowed to Zhao Hai and said, "Young master." There was nothing more to say. When Zhao Hai saw Meg's appearance, he also burst into a bitter smile. The reason Meg didn't look up at him was because in the past, Adam wanted to insult Meg because she was beautiful, but in the end, he didn't succeed. However, since then, Meg has always avoided Adam. Even if he met, he just lowered his head and called out, "Young master," before turning around and leaving. Zhao Hai sighed. It was all the trouble caused by Adam, but he had to bear it himself. Oh my goodness, what harm did this cause? Zhao Hai looked at Meg's expression and sighed, "I don't have anything to do. You can go down and rest. I also need to sleep for a while. Just call me over for dinner." Meg responded, turned around and walked away. After leaving, she gently closed the door for Zhao Hai. Watching Meg evade him like he was running away, Zhao Hai let out a bitter smile. Now his body is all well and there is no discomfort at all. The reason why he said he wanted to rest is to sort out Adam's memories and see what else he doesn't know. In addition, he now has a space farm, which is very helpful for his future development. He needs to think about how to better utilize this space farm. Now his space farm is growing carrots. If he buys these carrots back to the farm, he can get at least 500 gold coins, which means he can earn 350 gold coins. He can also take these radishes out of the warehouse and have Green take them to other parts of the Ark continent, maybe to get more gold coins. But the most important thing is that he doesn't know if there is a vegetable like radish here on the Ark continent. Adam used to be a spendthrift, so he couldn't even go buy groceries. He usually eats some good dishes or cooked ones, and doesn't even ask what's inside, so he has no idea if there is a vegetable like radish on this continent. If those carrots cannot be bought outside, then he also needs to deal with them. Carrots are all treasures, and the system should only collect carrots. The leaf system of carrots should not require them, and carrot leaves are actually very delicious. As long as they are simply pickled, they can become a delicious dish. Zhao Hai lives in northern China, so he still remembers clearly that when he was young, his mother often used this pickled carrot leaves to cook, and the taste was also very good. And this kind of carrot leaf can also be used as feed to feed some herbivorous animals. If there is no such thing as carrots in this world, they can buy them and leave the leaves to feed some herbivorous warcraft. In Adam's memory, there are some warcraft that are easy to feed and can eat everything. They can then raise a large number of warcraft, and they will not be afraid of having no meat to eat. They can also establish a ranch, so naturally there will be more income. Even if there is a radish in this world and the price is not high, if it wants to be sold to a space store, it can still keep the radish leaves. Anyway, it cannot be wasted. Now, due to insufficient level, Zhao Hai is unable to open a ranch in the space. However, in the Ark continent, he can open the ranch first. When the space is upgraded, he can open the ranch and then raise some animals on Earth. Zhao Hai has already decided that his future development should focus on farming, as there is also a lack of attacking power in the space. Farming is the most suitable option for him. Now I have a large fiefdom, a mountain, a dead land, and a decaying swamp. These places are all my fiefdoms, but it will take a lot of time to make them useful. Zhao Hai only hopes that the water and land in the space farm can truly change the black soil wasteland, so that he can have a large area of arable land, and no matter when it comes, the land will be the fundamental place. And the issue of manpower has never been a concern for Zhao Hai, because he knows that there is a kind of person in this world that is not found on Earth, a slave. There are no slaves on Earth, but there are here. As long as you have money, you can buy many slaves, and the life and death of these slaves are completely determined by you. They are absolutely loyal to you and will not run away, because every slave is branded with a special imprint of this family. Once someone discovers that they ran out without their master, the consequences will be very tragic. So as long as his farm can make money, he doesn't have to worry about human affairs at all. There are many slaves on the continent, even if they were not originally slaves, as long as someone needs them and can provide a suitable value, those nobles can make countless people become slaves. Nobles have everything, and this world is so simple. But with Zhao Hai's current identity, if he suddenly sells a large number of slaves, it will definitely attract the attention of those with intentions. Therefore, no matter what, he must act low-key is his policy, and farming is his main development direction. With all these thoughts in mind, Zhao Hai finally breathed a sigh of relief and slowly lay down on the bed. He still felt like he was dreaming. He was an ordinary otaku on Earth, and although he enjoyed reading time travel novels, it didn't mean he wanted to travel. But who would have thought that such a thing would actually happen to him? Oh my God, if you let an otaku leave the computer, isn't that equivalent to turning a pervert into a eunuch? This is really cruel. Zhao Hai let out a long sigh and threw himself onto the bed. Looking at the stone roof, he couldn't help but sigh again. In such a place, there are no entertainment facilities at all. How do I live every day? My novel, this is really deadly. Perhaps it was because he had just received too much memory, coupled with the unexpected joy of the space farm, that Zhao Hai's nerves were very excited for a while. Now that the excitement had passed, waves of fatigue struck, and unconsciously, he fell asleep again. What Zhao Hai didn't notice was that as soon as he fell asleep, his door was pushed open. Meg peeked in from outside and saw that Zhao Hai was lying on the bed sleeping. Then he walked in lightly and picked up the blanket on the bed to cover Zhao Hai. He then stood by the bed, looked at Zhao Hai, sighed, and murmured, "Young master, you must be brave. The Buddha family relies entirely on you." After finishing speaking, he turned around and walked out, gently closing the door for him. Meg had just come out of Zhao Hai's room when Green walked over and looked at Meg, saying, "Meg, how's the young master doing? What are you doing?" Meg said, "I didn't do anything, I went to sleep." Green nodded and said, "Go and see how your grandmother's dinner is prepared. Once it's ready, come and call the young master for dinner. Sigh, since we've all arrived at this place, the etiquette of the nobility can only be relaxed. After shaking his head, he walked back. Meg looked at her grandfather, who knew his feelings very well. His grandfather devoted his whole life to the Buddha family, but he never expected that the Buddha family would fall in front of him. How could Green feel so good? Meg followed behind Green and walked into the kitchen. Although there was only Merlin here now, Merlin was only responsible for their meals, and she didn't have to care about what the slaves outside ate. Green had already given the slaves food, and they would make it themselves. Meg strongly agrees with Green's approach. Those slaves were already poor people, and it was still very good here. Although they didn't eat well, they could still eat enough. If it were other nobles, it would be impossible for them to eat enough. Meg is also very clear about her dreams. The Buddha family is now supported by her grandfather, and Adam, the young master, doesn't understand anything. Now she only hopes that Adam can be more sensible and not act recklessly, otherwise the Buddha family really has no hope. But even if Adam is sensible, there is still a lot he needs to learn. In the past, he was just a typical representative of a playboy who lacked knowledge and skills. He had no experience in managing a family. If he is sensible and willing to learn, it's okay. If he still refuses to learn and continues to command blindly, their current situation will not last for many years. Although the Buddha family was not a very wealthy family in the past, they were still considered aristocrats, and although they were convicted this time, they were not plagiarized, so there was still a lot of money in the family, totaling about 100,000 gold coins, which is no longer a small amount. But now this money has been exchanged for various supplies by Green, leaving only over 100 gold coins left. If Buddha continues to spend as much as before, they will probably have to tie their necks and wait to starve to death. The quality of Adam now determines the survival of the Buddha family. Chapter 7 Is Not My Rule. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The sky slowly darkened, and in the entire castle, except for the magic lamp used in Zhao Hai's bedroom, torches were used everywhere else. This kind of magic lamp is made of a type of magic crystal from the Ark continent, and the magic crystal blocks can only be obtained through two channels. The first is the underground magic crystal mine, which has good and bad effects. Based on the amount of energy contained inside, the more energy it contains, the more it can be used as power for magic tools. The less energy it has, the only way it can be used for lighting. However, these underground magic crystals are disposable, and when used up, the magic crystals will become useless. There is also a type of magic crystal produced by Warcraft, which is very rare. There may not be one magic crystal on 10 Warcraft, but the magic crystal produced by Warcraft is not very high in energy, but it is very stable. It is an auxiliary tool for magicians to cast magic. Most importantly, this type of magic crystal can be used repeatedly. After his energy is depleted, he can absorb the magic energy of the same attributes in nature for a period of time and slowly replenish it, so that he can use it again. Regardless of the type of magic crystal, it is very expensive. The magic crystal produced in the magic crystal mine is slightly cheaper than that produced on Warcraft, but the price is not affordable for ordinary people. The Buddha family is in a very difficult period. Although Green bought a few magic crystals, each one is precious and cannot be used indiscriminately. Therefore, at night, except for Zhao Hai's room, other places are lit with torches. At this point, the slaves had already finished their meal and gone to bed, while Merlin had just finished cooking and was asking Meg to call Zhao Hai. Zhao Hai slept soundly this night. Although he had arrived in a different world, he now had a space farm and had no need to worry about his livelihood. Moreover, because he had been unconscious these days, Merlin had been using magic to treat him. There was also a large amount of water element in his body, which had a calming effect. In addition, he had now let go of his worries, so he slept soundly. Meg arrived outside Zhao Hai's room and first listened to the sound inside. The room was very quiet and there was no sound. Merlin immediately knocked on the door and said, "Young master, it's time to wake up and have dinner." There was still no sound in the room, and Meg called twice again. There was still no sound in the room, so Meg had to push the door into Zhao Hai's room. As soon as she entered Zhao Hai's room, Meg heard a burst of even breathing. She walked lightly to Zhao Hai's bed and saw that Zhao Hai was sleeping soundly, without even hearing their cries. Meg sighed, unsure if Zhao Hai had a big heart or was foolish. At this point, he could still sleep so soundly. Meg stood by Zhao Hai's bed and gently pushed him, saying, "Young master, it's time to get up and have dinner." Zhao Hai woke up in a daze and murmured, "What time is it?" Meg hurriedly said, "Young master, it's already 7 o'clock in the evening. It's time for dinner." Zhao Hai just opened his eyes, turned his head to look at Meg standing by the bed, and then turned his head to look out the window. He found that it was already getting dark. He slowly sat up, shook his slightly dizzy head, and finally regained consciousness. He turned his head to Meg and said, "Meg, what's the date today?" Meg lowered her head and said, "Young master, today is April 6th. Zhao Hai nodded and calculated in his mind that he fell into a coma on February 17, 1637 in the Gregorian calendar. Now it is April 6th, which means he has been in a coma for over a month. After being in a coma, he can still move freely to the ground. If it were on Earth, Jian would be a miracle. However, Zhao Hai did not ask Meg what was going on, because from Adam's memory, he learned that the healing magic of wizards on this continent was very magical. Not to mention, it was more than a month. Even if you were unconscious for a year, it could make you wake up and walk on the ground naturally, just like sleeping, without the appearance of muscle atrophy. As soon as Zhao Hai sat by the bed, Meg took Zhao Hai's boots and wanted to put them on. Zhao Hai immediately said, "Meg, put them down. I'll do it myself." Meg was taken aback for a moment, but still said, "Young master, let me do it. I was supposed to do it." Zhao Hai was not used to this, so he quickly stopped Meg and said, "Forget it, I'll handle these small things myself in the future." After snatching the boots from Meg's hand, he put them on himself. Meg stared blankly at Zhao Hai from the side. She felt that today's Zhao Hai was very unfamiliar. In the past, Zhao Hai not only wore boots, but even if he took off his boots, he wouldn't do it himself. Today, she actually put it on herself. Zhao Hai stood up after putting on his boots and turned to Meg, saying, let's go eat first. I have some things to discuss with Grandpa Green." Although Meg felt that Zhao Hai was very strange today, he still responded and led him towards the direction of the restaurant, because Meg knew that Zhao Hai had never left the room since he arrived here, so he couldn't even find the castle there. If he had to walk alone, he wouldn't know where the restaurant was. As soon as he left the door of the room, Zhao Hai was taken aback. He then curiously looked around and saw that this castle was clearly an ancient castle, built for some years, but it looked quite sturdy. However, the style was very old, and the interior design was not as good as Adam's original home, giving it a gloomy feeling. However, Zhao Hai didn't care about these things. He preferred the castle to be like this. In his impression, the castle should be like this, which has the style of an ancient castle. Maybe he can still discover the secret chamber in this castle when. Soon, Zhao Hai also noticed the torches on the wall. When he saw these torches and thought about the price of magic crystals, Zhao Hai immediately understood why torches were used here. Although Adam didn't know the price of things before, he still knew the price of things like magic crystals because they were high-end consumer goods that only people from Adam's class could afford, so he knew the price. Zhao Hai also thought of the magic lamp in his room, which seemed to be the only magic lamp in the entire castle. The thought of this made Zhao Hai's heart warm. The restaurant was not far from Zhao Hai's bedroom, and soon the two of them entered. Green, Merlin, Stone, and Wood were standing in the restaurant waiting for Zhao Hai. When they saw Zhao Hai coming in, they all bowed and said, "Good night, young master. Please have a meal with him." Zhao Hai nodded and glanced at the wooden table in the restaurant. He found that only his own utensils were set there. Through Adam's memory, Zhao Hai knew that when nobles ate, servants could not sit at the same table and could only stand by to serve. Zhao Hai sat down and looked at the restaurant. It was not big, only about 20 square meters, with a long dining table in the middle. The table was covered with a snow-white tablecloth, and there were 2 candlesticks on the tablecloth, each with 3 wax candles flipped over. There are 8 chairs arranged around the dining table, all of which are exquisitely crafted and can be seen as high-end goods. Each corner of the restaurant has a torch flipping over, illuminating the entire restaurant. However, apart from these, there is nothing else in this restaurant. Zhao Hai finished looking at the restaurant and turned to Green and the others, saying, "Grandpa Green, you can also sit down and eat. After dinner, I have something to ask you." Green immediately bowed to Zhao Hai and said, "Young master, this is not allowed. We cannot sit with you at the same table while you are eating. This is a rule of the empire." Zhao Hai snorted and said, "The rules of the empire are not mine. Since the empire has abandoned us, why should we still abide by the rules of the empire? Stop talking. Go and get the utensils, sit down and eat together. While eating, I'm talking about something. If you don't come over, then I won't eat either." Upon seeing Zhao Hai's appearance, Green couldn't help but turn his head to look at Meilin. Meilin glared at him and said, "What are you looking at me for? The young master hasn't had a good meal for over a month. Do you still want the young master to be hungry?" Sure enough, for Green, Zhao Hai's body was heavier than anything else. Upon hearing Meilin's words, he immediately turned his head and said, "Then you and Meg can go to the kitchen to pick it up. I'll be here to serve the young master." UU reading www.uukangshu.net. Merlin didn't say anything this time and led Meg away. Only then did Green sit down with the wood and stone. Wood and stone were clearly a bit uncomfortable, sitting there like they had pointed buttocks, and it was obvious that both of them were a bit silly and not very good at speaking. Since seeing Zhao Hai, they just followed Green and said, "Good night, young master, please have a meal." But they didn't say a word. Zhao Hai learned from Adam's memory that wood and stone were children adopted by his father and were not very intelligent. They could be said to be quite stupid, but both were exceptionally talented and had innate divine powers. With the addition of learning dragon fighting chi, both of them now have the strength of a level 6 warrior and are loyal to the Buddha family, never betraying them. When Meilin went to serve the meal, Zhao Hai turned to Green and said, "Grandpa Green, how many gold coins do we still have in our hands now?" Green was taken aback for a moment. He didn't know what Zhao Hai meant by asking this question, but he immediately stood up and replied, "Young master, we still have 180 gold coins in our hands, but we don't lack any supplies now, so these gold coins can be used." Zhao Hai quickly asked Green to sit down and continued, "When we came from the imperial capital, did we use carriages to bring things far away? What about the horses that pull the carriages?" Green said, "Young master, our place is small and we don't have much output, so in order to save food, we only have 5 horses. The carriages we use when we come are all hired." Zhao Hai was stunned for a moment, but soon understood what Green meant. Green was trying to save as much as possible. You should know that a good horse is not just fed with grass, it must be fed with some food, and they cannot produce much food here, so of course they can save as much as possible, let alone raise horses. Chapter 8. Arrangements. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhao Hai nodded and continued, "Grandpa Green, how do we solve our current meat problem? Didn't we buy some meat monsters to raise them?" Green didn't know why Zhao Hai was asking this, thinking he was afraid of not having meat to eat, so he immediately said, "Young master, don't worry. We have already purchased some blue-eyed rabbits and long-haired pigs for us to eat meat. Young master, don't worry about eating meat." Zhao Hai couldn't help but laugh and cry. It seemed that Adam's human nature was not very good in the past. He wanted to find a way to breed quickly and not be picky about food, while Green thought he was worried about not having meat to eat, which was just that. At this moment, Merlin and Meg walked in carrying several food plates, with some food on them, but much simpler than Zhao Hai's. Zhao Hai looked at his plate and found that there was a piece of white bread, 2 eggs, a piece of meat, and some vegetables on it. In the current situation, his food was already very good. But in Green's plate, there was only black bread and some vegetables, no eggs or meat at all, which made Zhao Hai's heart ache. However, he didn't say anything, just picked up a knife and fork to eat. Green and the others saw him start eating, and they all started eating. Green and the others didn't eat fast, only Wood and Stone ate very quickly, and it was evident that Merlin brought them much more food than the others. It has to be admitted that Merlin's food is still delicious. Although it is not as delicious as Chinese cuisine, it is already remarkable to be able to make these simple foods taste the way they are. Zhao Hai nodded in satisfaction and quickly ate the food in front of him. Although he was not used to eating with a knife and fork, he was indeed a bit hungry, so he ate quickly. However, when he finished eating, Green and the others had already finished, standing there watching him. This made Zhao Hai very impatient, but he also knew that this situation could not be changed in a day or two. After eating, Merlin and Meg tidied up the plates and brought a pot of food. As soon as they smelled the smell coming from the pot, Zhao Hai knew that it was filled with koya. Koya is something similar to coffee and is a favorite ingredient among the aristocrats on the mainland. Green quickly poured Zhao Hai a cup, and Zhao Hai took a sip that tasted similar to coffee. He couldn't help but nod, picked up the pot, and brought a cup to Gissen. Then he pointed to the nearby stool and said, "Grandpa Green, please sit down. I have something to discuss with you. Come on, have some koya." Green hurriedly said, "I dare not, just stand the old slave." Zhao Hai stood up and pressed Green onto the chair, saying, "Grandpa Green, you are from my grandfather's generation. You have watched me grow up, and you are also my elder. This time, the Buddha family is in such a difficult situation. If it weren't for you, my life would be in danger. You don't have to be polite. Sit down. I really have something to discuss with you." Green sat down and looked at Zhao Hai's appearance. Suddenly, tears streamed down and he murmured, "Old servant, just sit down. Young master has grown up and is more sensible." Zhao Hai sighed and said, "After going through so many things, it's time to grow up. I'm sorry Grandpa Green, I used to make you worry, but I won't do it in the future." Green shook his head and said, "No, young master, don't say that. It was because the old slave's protection was not favorable that the young master had an accident, and the Buddha family fell into such a field." Zhao Hai shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "No wonder you. How could my father possibly listen to what you're saying? All right, let's not say that anymore, Grandpa Green. Do you know what kind of warcraft on the mainland are not picky eaters, grow fast, and reproduce very quickly?" Green was taken aback by Zhao Hai's question, but he still knew about these things, so he immediately said, "There are many types of warcraft you're talking about on the mainland, such as the blue-eyed rabbit and the long-haired pig we raise. They all belong to the first level of warcraft and have little attack power. The blue-eyed rabbit only takes more than 3 months from birth to growth, and after they mature, they can give birth on average every more than a month. The number of first births is not less than 5, and the long-haired pig's growth cycle is longer, about 8 to 10 months to mature, and then an average of about 4 months to give birth. The number of offspring born each time will not be less than 7, and these 2 types of warcraft are also the main sources of meat on the mainland, which are raised by many people." Zhao Hai nodded and said, "Which of these 2 types of warcraft are more farmed by people?" Greenway said, "Although the long-haired pig and blue-eyed rabbit are not picky eaters, they are herbivores. They usually only eat some plant leaves, unlike the long-haired pig, which eats everything. Zhao Hai nodded and found that what Green said about the blue-eyed rabbit was no different from the rabbits on Earth. He immediately stood up and said, "Grandpa Green, didn't you say we bought the blue-eyed rabbit? Take me to take a look." Although Green didn't know what Zhao Hai was going to do, he was happy to see that Zhao Hai had finally started to care about the situation at home. However, he still said, "Young master, it's already late today. I think we should go and see tomorrow. Young master, let's go back and rest early." Zhao Hai looked at the sky outside and felt a bit anxious. He nodded and said, "All right, let's go see tomorrow. But Grandpa Green, I noticed that there seems to be a lot of supplies on the open space in the castle. Why haven't we moved them to the castle?" Green said with a troubled expression, "Young master, it's not that we don't want to move, but that the castle is too small to accommodate so many supplies. So now we're organizing slaves to build wooden sheds so that we can put those things inside." Zhao Hai nodded and looked at the sky outside and said, "Do those slaves have a place to live? It's already April and the rainy season is approaching. We need to give those slaves a place to live. Our Buddha family only has this few people left, and we will have to rely on them in the future." The uneasy expression on Green's face suddenly improved. When Zhao Hai asked about the supplies in the castle, he was afraid that Zhao Hai would ask about the slaves, because in the eyes of the nobles in the mainland, those slaves were far less valuable than those supplies. If Zhao Hai thought the same, he would definitely drive those slaves out of the house and put the supplies into the house. But Green was very clear that the Buddha family was only a few people now, and it was almost the rainy season. If those slaves were driven outside to live, it would be easy for them to get sick, and they would face the dilemma of having no one available. But Green didn't expect that Zhao Hai also thought of these things, which made him know that his young master had finally grown up, so he hurriedly said, "Young master, please rest assured that everything has been arranged." Zhao Hai nodded and said, "With Grandpa Green around, I can rest assured. All right, I'll go back and rest. If there's anything we need, we'll talk about it tomorrow." After finishing, he walked upstairs. At this moment, Merlin and Meg also walked out of the kitchen. Seeing Green standing there with an excited expression, Merlin curiously said, "Old man, what's wrong with you?" Green suddenly burst out laughing and said, "Young master has grown up. He is sensible, ha ha ha, the Buddha family will never die." Then he told Mei Lin about his conversation with Zhao Hai just now and said with a smile, "Young master knows how to care about the family's affairs. This is a good thing. As long as young master can manage the family well, even if the Buddha family cannot develop and grow, it can still continue. Anyway, the Buddha family will not disappear." Merlin was also very happy and said, "It doesn't matter whether you are strong or not. As long as the young master is safe, I think it's better now." In the imperial capital, although the Buddha family was beautiful, they were also too eye-catching. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been framed by those guys. Now, it's better to stay away from that circle of right and wrong and live your own life here. There's nothing here in the black soil wilderness, and no one will have any plans to come here. Our Buddha family is safer. Green nodded slightly with a smile and said, "Yes, that's right. That's why I bought half of the male and half of the female slaves this time, just to prepare for the future development of the family. I don't want anything else now. As long as the young master can be safe and the Buddha family can continue, I will be satisfied." Merlin also nodded, with a smile on her face. Meg stood behind Merlin, with no expression on her face, but a hint of joy in her eyes. Green's laughter was also heard by Zhao Hai. Thinking back on Green's expression just now, Zhao Hai knew why Green was so happy. He couldn't help but burst into a bitter smile at the thought. He didn't expect that he was just acting normally, and they were just so happy. It seems that Adam, who used to be, really didn't do anything good. When Zhao Hai returned to his room, he couldn't sleep anymore. Perhaps it was because he slept too much during the day. He was lying in bed now, staring like a light bulb, but couldn't sleep anymore. After lying for over an hour, Zhao Hai still couldn't fall asleep. After thinking about it, he decided to go to the space to see how the carrot was growing. As soon as he entered the space, Zhao Hai was taken aback. He didn't expect that the radish he had just planted for a few hours had already grown large leaves, and it seemed that it was not far from mature. Zhao Hai stared blankly at these radishes. He really didn't expect them to grow so fast. Although space soil and space water can both improve the growth rate of plants, is this too fast? Zhao Hai couldn't help but walk to the edge of the ground and opened a carrot to look at it. He found that a small section of the carrot had already grown underground, but because the time was too short, the carrot was still not big and needed to wait for some time to mature. Zhao Hai chuckled foolishly for a while, then buried the radish before standing up and murmuring, "At this speed, it will ripen tomorrow morning." You can ask Grandpa Green if there are radishes like this here, and also check if the blue-eyed rabbits eat radish leaves. If they do, they can start a ranch. Hee hee hee. Chapter 9. One day in the morning and one night. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Turning around in the space again, it seemed that there was nothing else going on. Zhao Hai came out of the space and lay quietly on the bed, constantly thinking about what had happened since waking up. Since knowing that he was wearing a super, Zhao Hai not only had no fear at all, but also had a hint of joy in his heart. When he was on Earth, Zhao Hai was just an otaku, living with a meager monthly subscription fee, and the pressure of life was great. But when he arrived here, it was different. He was a nobleman, although excluded, but he had his own fiefdom. Although it was a dead end, he had a few loyal subordinates and 100 slaves who could decide their lives with just one word. His castle was attended to, and most importantly, he had a space farm. Although I don't know how this space farm came about, as long as it exists, he won't have to worry about food and drink for a lifetime, and it's also good to live a carefree life. While thinking about these, I kept thinking about the future development of the farm, but now everything I think about is in vain, only when the farm further develops. But the farm has clearly undergone mutation now, and it's really hard to say whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. Therefore, as long as there is an opportunity tomorrow, it is necessary to bring the black soil outside into the space to see if it can be transformed with space soil and water. It is also necessary to accumulate funds as soon as possible, buy more seeds from the space, and preferably bring some space water outside. This way, even if the space farm disappears in the future, it will have its own piece of land, which is the foundation for survival. Thinking about it, he unconsciously fell asleep again. In his dream, he built a big estate and became the owner of it. He lived his own little life, which was truly beautiful. While he was sitting dreaming, suddenly a voice came. "The radish is ripe, please collect it as soon as possible." Zhao Haiji woke up and quickly entered the space, only to find that the radishes were already ripe. One by one, the large white radishes squeezed the ground open. Zhao Hai didn't care too much anymore and quickly ran to the side of the space. He dug out a big white carrot in a few strokes and wiped the soil with his hand, regardless of whether it was dirty or not. He took a bite when he went up. The sweet and slightly spicy carrot drop filled his mouth, and Zhao Hai couldn't help but sigh. The taste was really amazing. When Zhao Hai was on Earth, he particularly liked to eat white radishes. White radishes tasted sweet, unlike green radishes, which always tasted spicy. The white radish growing in space tastes much better than those on Earth. Zhao Hai chewed on the white radish in his mouth and looked at the one in his hand. The radish weighed at least 3 pounds, which was not too small among the white radishes. It was straight, chubby, and had an appetite. Zhao Hai laughed happily and walked to the window of the thatched cottage with the radish in his hand. He picked up the basket with the word "collect" and loudly said to the dirt, "Collect." The radishes in the field were like being dug out of the ground by big hands, flying out one by one and falling into the basket. However, the basket was still full. Zhao Hai looked down and saw that as soon as they entered the basket, they disappeared immediately. In no time, the entire plot of land was completely collected. Zhao Hai checked the warehouse and sure enough, all the radishes were stored in it, leaving behind carrot pits on that piece of land. Instead of selling these turnips, Zhao Hai bought another bag of seeds and ordered the little shovel to start digging the ground, and then planted the bag of seeds in the ground. This bag of seeds had just been planted when he heard a ding sound, followed by a voice that said, "Congratulations on reaching level 2. The system will give you 2 bags of cabbage seeds, each bag can be planted on 1 acre of land." Zhao Hai glanced at his mouth and said, "You're really stingy. The seeds you give can only be planted on 1 acre of land." After finishing his work, Zhao Hai came out of the space and looked at the sky outside. He found that it was still early, and Fish Belly White had just appeared in the east. At this moment, Green and the others couldn't get up, even while the slaves were still sleeping. Zhao Hai was so excited that he couldn't sleep. He sat alone in the room, gnawing on the white radish dug out of the space, and the smell was really irresistible. A carrot weighing over 3 pounds, Zhao Hai couldn't finish it. He only ate half of it and couldn't eat it anymore. But something strange happened. Zhao Hai felt a warm current in his stomach, and his body seemed to be full of strength, without any drowsiness. Zhao Hai was taken aback for a moment. This had never happened before. He seemed to be eating carrots, not stimulants. How could this happen? Isn't this radish or ginseng? At the thought of this, Zhao Hai couldn't help but touch his nose. He was afraid of nosebleeds, but he found that his nose was still clean and there was no nosebleeds. Zhao Hai gave a self-deprecating smile. He was already a person with wild thoughts, so he often did things that others seemed ridiculous. However, he could be certain that he was not just an illusion, because now he still feels energetic, his eyes bright, and there is no drowsiness at all. This situation is somewhat abnormal. From Adam's memory, it is known that he drank the water of nothingness. Although drinking the water of nothingness has no effect on people who do not learn magic and fighting spirit, it can also make people feel very tired. Even if you want to become a warrior solely by physical strength, it is impossible. How can you have such an endless feeling? There is only one possibility of this feeling, the reason for the carrot just now. As soon as he thought of this, Zhao Hai couldn't help but become even more excited about this carrot. He immediately received it in the spatial warehouse and prepared to wait to ask Green what exactly this carrot is. After looking at the outside sky, it had already started to light up, but it was still very early. Everyone had not woken up yet, and Zhao Hai was too embarrassed to wake them up. However, staying in the room was too boring, so Zhao Hai slowly walked out, wanting to take a good look at this castle that belonged to him. Coming out of the inner castle and slowly walking forward, passing through a small square, we arrived at the outer castle. The structure of this outer castle is very simple, with a blue stone ground and rows of stone houses. Behind the stone houses is the city wall, which is very high, about 10 meters high. When we walked to the vicinity of the city wall, we found that it is also very thick, about 4 meters long. The city gate looks like it is made of pig iron, about 4 meters high, with a huge iron bolt inserted in the middle. There is a shaking device on the city gate, which seems to be used to pull out and insert the iron bolt. This device is designed very cleverly. As long as you shake a handle under the city gate, the gear on top will rotate, thereby driving the iron door bolt above the city gate, locking the city door and pulling it out. Zhao Hai nodded, not realizing that the machinery of this world was already so advanced. Looking around again, he didn't find anything, except for a pile of supplies bought by Green in the middle of the square. There was nothing else at all. As soon as he saw those supplies, Zhao Hai couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed that Green was not really a material for business. He had even exchanged all the gold coins in his hand for this kind of thing. Don't they know that gold coins can produce gold coins, and these things will eventually be used up? It seems that Green wants to turn this place into a secluded mansion, but considering what he has done, he is also right. If it weren't for Zhao Hai bringing it here, or if it weren't for the original Adam, he might have lived here longer. If he had the money to run around outside, he might have died soon. Turning to the stone staircase next to the city gate, I slowly walked towards the city wall. The entire body of the city wall was made of a type of iron blue stone, which looked very sturdy. The city wall was also well preserved, and the battlements were very neat, so there was no need to repair them. At the four corners of the city wall, there were arrow towers, which could protect the castle in all directions. Zhao Hai turned his head and glanced at the inner city wall. The inner castle wall was even higher than the outer castle, and several arrow towers were built on it. It seems that the defense ability of this castle is really not built. Turning around, I glanced at the outside of the city wall. There was a moat about 5 meters wide outside the wall, and there was water in the river. The water was very clear, and it could be seen that it was live water. There is a suspension bridge on the moat, which is about 5 meters wide. The suspension rope is made of iron chains that are thick and thin on the arm, which is very heavy. The suspension bridge is made of a huge iron frame, and the wooden boards on top are very new, which can be seen as newly replaced. Directly opposite the city gate is a straight avenue, also paved with stones. It is unknown how far it is, and it seems to have been unused for a long time, with many weeds growing on it. Zhao Hai knew that this castle had been abandoned for many years, and that road was what they walked once when they arrived. I believe that no one has ever left the castle in the past month, so that road looks like that. Except for this road, outside the castle, everything is black soil, with no grass growing on it, appearing so desolate and carrying a deathly silence. At this moment, the sun had already risen, and a golden sun shone on Zhao Hai. Zhao Hai stood on the city wall with his hands on his back, looking at the sun that had just risen in the distance. He couldn't help but burst out laughing and said, "All right, this castle, everything here is mine. Although this place has just started, it's like this newly rising sun, one day, I will let this sunshine shine all over the earth." Zhao Hai didn't notice, and at some point, Green and the others had already gotten up, standing under the city wall, quietly watching Zhao Hai standing on the castle, dressed in golden light and resembling a deity, with tears of excitement flashing in his eyes. Chapter 10. Hope. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhao Hai remained calm until all the sun had risen to the ground. Yes, this was the first sunrise he had seen in a foreign world. The magnificent scenery made him feel refreshed and full of pride, so he couldn't help but say those words. Only when Zhao Hai turned around did he realize that Green and the others were standing under the city wall, with the 100 slaves standing behind them. It was evident that these slaves were carefully selected, half male and half female, and both were strong and not sick. They were now well groomed, and their clothes were also clean. However, there was a mark on the faces of the male slaves, which was on their foreheads, like a wild dragon waving its teeth and claws. It is the badge of the Buddha family, made according to the name of their family's fighting spirit. As soon as Green saw Zhao Hai and saw them, he immediately bowed to Zhao Hai and loudly said, "Young master, the glory of the Buddha family will surely shine on the whole earth. Please teach us a lesson, young master." After he finished speaking, all the slaves behind him knelt down, one head knocked to the ground, and no one dared to look up at Zhao Hai. Zhao Hai was just an ordinary otaku in his previous life. Seeing such a scene, he was momentarily stunned and at a loss, not knowing what to say. After a while, their emotions slowly calmed down. At first glance, they saw that Green and the others were still bending down and not getting up. He hurriedly said, "Grandpa Green, please get up, and everyone else should also get up. We have arrived at a place like this where there is nothing left, no land to cultivate, and no minerals in the mountains. We only have this abandoned castle as our refuge, and you all have a common surname, Buddha. Whether you want it or not, your bodies have already been branded with the Buddha family's imprint. You are already members of the Buddha family. If the Buddha family exists, it is necessary for you to exist. If the Buddha family disappears, you will also disappear. This is an unchangeable fact. Yes, we have nothing now, but we have one hand. Everything in this world is created by human hands. Each of us has one hand, so we will not starve to death, we will make our lives more beautiful. Most of you are slaves, and you may think that the beauty of life has nothing to do with you, because no matter how beautiful your life is, you are still slaves. But what I want to say today is that as long as you work hard and make contributions to the Buddha family, I can exempt you from being slaves and make you civilians. Your child will no longer be a slave. Perhaps one day he can join the Buddha family's army and become a glorious warrior. If he performs well, he may become a knight, a nobleman. I demand that you do your best, and I will give you the best. Just work hard. I, Adam Buddha, swear with the honor of my family, to fulfill my promise today. A slight commotion arose among the slaves, and it should be noted that these slaves had received professional training before being bought out. They were not allowed to move during the master's training, and even if they wanted to fart, they had to endure it. Such commotion should not occur. But Zhao Hai's words are really shocking. There has never been a nobleman on the mainland who would turn a slave into a commoner. Once you become a slave, you will be a slave for life, and your descendants will be slaves. This is unchangeable. If Zhao Hai only talked about these slaves without words, he would not believe them. However, Zhao Hai swore with the honor of the Buddha family. You should know that the nobles in the Ark continent do not easily swear, and even if they swear, they generally do not swear with their own family's honor. That is the most important thing for all nobles. As long as they swear with their family's honor, they will definitely do it. That is to say, all the things Zhao Hai said are true. What is the greatest wish of a slave? One day, they could become commoners, restore their freedom, and prevent their descendants from suffering from slavery. As a result, many slaves rebelled, but were quickly suppressed by the nobles because they were just slaves, without weapons, armor, and fighting spirit. In this situation, they cannot defeat those noble armies armed to the teeth. Now Zhao Hai tells them that you don't have to rebel. As long as you work hard and make offerings for the Buddha family, you can obtain the status of a commoner. For these slaves, it's really like a dream. It is necessary for slaves to work hard, because if they do not work hard and are discovered, they will be executed. Even if they are not executed, they will receive the harshest punishment. Therefore, no one dares to be lazy. But now someone tells them that as long as you work hard, I can give you what you want the most. This is too shocking for them. Green and his companions were also stunned. They didn't expect Zhao Hai to say such things. To be honest, Green didn't quite agree with Zhao Hai's words because it was necessary for those slaves to work hard, and there was no noble on the mainland who would turn a slave into a commoner. There were too many things involved in this. But now that Zhao Hai's words have been spoken, he has no way to refute them. He can only wait until he returns to the inner castle to explain the situation to Zhao Hai in detail. Taking a glance at the people below, Zhao Hai also knew that it would be good if they had such a reaction. From Adam's memory, he already knew the status of these slaves. It was because he knew this that he used what these slaves wanted the most to lure them. Human creativity is infinite. As long as we give them hope, the energy they unleash is unimaginable, and now Zhao Hai needs them to unleash this energy, which is why he does so. Zhao Hai is still very satisfied with their reaction, so he continued. You can come up with various ways. As long as you can benefit the Buddha family or make something that can improve your life, you can take it to Director Green. As long as I believe that what you make is useful and good, I will take credit for you. As long as your credit reaches a certain degree, you can become civilians, even if you don't know how to do anything. As long as you work hard, as long as you perform well in your work, you can receive a share of credit. As long as this credit accumulates to a certain degree, you can become a commoner and a child of our Buddha family and Black Soil territory. The slaves were even more excited. They were almost going to treat Zhao Hai as a god now, because only gods could be so kind. All the slaves had an aura on their bodies, which surprised Green, who was already a level 8 warrior standing in front of them. Green turned his head to look at the slaves, and he noticed that something seemed to have added to their bodies. Before, when he saw these slaves, he always felt that they were lifeless, like a stone, but now they were like one person, with an extra vitality and motivation. Green's heart was shaken, and he suddenly understood Zhao Hai's approach. If the Buddha family wanted to develop, it was impossible to rely solely on 100 lifeless slaves. However, if it were 100 people full of motivation, it would be completely different. Green didn't know what kind of things 100 motivated people could do, but he was clear about what 100 slaves could do. Green took a deep breath and a sincere smile appeared on his face, along with a hint of determination. He believed that the opportunity for the Buddha family to start anew was coming. Zhao Hai also felt the changes in the bodies of several slaves. He smiled slightly and knew that his words were effective, so he immediately said, "All right, you go to work. Arrange all these supplies first, and there will be new tasks for you tomorrow." The slaves responded and walked quickly like those supplies, their footsteps much more powerful than before. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net was full of energy all over their bodies. Zhao Hai nodded in satisfaction, got off the city wall, and slowly walked to Green's side. He said to Green, "Grandpa Green, let's go back. I have something to ask you." Green responded and led Merlin and the others towards the inner castle behind Zhao Hai. Looking at Zhao Hai's back, Green knew that Zhao Hai had really changed. He was no longer the young Master Adam who used to only know how to fool around. He was now the head of the Buddha family, a true head. A few people quickly arrived at the restaurant in the inner castle. After sitting down, Zhao Hai flipped his hand and the remaining half of the radish he had eaten appeared in his hand. He placed the radish on the table and said to Green, "Grandpa Green, what do you think this is?" Green remained silent, and Zhao Hai gave him a strange look. He noticed that Green was staring at his hand in a daze. He also knew why Green had such an expression because he had just taken out a carrot. On this continent, there is also space magic, but it is very difficult to learn and the requirements are very strict, so not many people go to learn it. Although there are space equipment that can be used to store things, opening those equipment requires energy. Whether it is magic or fighting spirit, as long as there is energy, it can be opened. And this person who drinks the water of nothingness, even with such equipment, he couldn't open it, let alone not yet. Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "Grandpa Green, what do you think this is?" Green regained his senses and stood up excitedly, saying, "Young master, did you just?" Zhao Hai waved his hand and said, "It's nothing, that's an ability I accidentally acquired. You just need to know, don't say anything, come and see what this is."